I was in the military. I was in the Air Force. I met my wife in the military. You either have a point where you're going to get out of the service or you're going to stay in. And I thought, I'm going to get out because I'm going to need a job eventually. So I get out. My wife gets out, and we're working, and we're struggling. 1-bedroom apartment, Hawthorne, small child, just working. I went to a job fair. I met some folks from Ontario PD. I applied for the job, and my wife didn't want me to do it. My mother didn't want me to do it. But I was like, man, I got to pay these bills. I got to pay these bills.
I got to put some milk in the refrigerator.
Right. I had actually thought about being a CHP officer because I said they just write tickets versus arresting people.
Oh,
I'm serious. It was a stigma being a black man in this profession. And the more I started looking into it, the more I enjoyed it, the more excited I got. Put on my big boy pants and told my wife, this is what I'm doing. And we moved out this way, started being a police officer.
Hey, what's going on, guys? As we get ready to get into this podcast, I didn't want to do it without giving a shout out to our sponsor, Thin Line Anthem. Thin Line Anthem is an organization that promotes positive and healthy style living. They produce supplements as well as pre-workouts and a whole bunch of other things that are going to get you to accomplish your fitness goals. And not only do they do that, they also support local law enforcement agencies. This is big news because we definitely need the support nowadays. And so please go on to thinlineanthem.com, use promo code It's Needed, all caps, no spaces, so that way you guys can get 25% off your next checkout. Thanks again and enjoy this podcast episode. Take care and God bless. Yo, what's going on? Welcome to another episode of the It's Needed podcast, where we discuss real issues involving law enforcement in the community. It's your boy Ryan Tillman, founder of Breaking Barriers United, and I'm joined today by the light-skinned wonder himself, Mr. Oh No, it's the Popo.
I don't even got no intro music today because I don't even deserve it. If you ain't watching this, you don't know what I'm talking about. But my setup is all bad today.
You definitely deserve it, bro. You holding that mic like you on stage or something.
Yeah, I might just spit a couple bars for you. I don't know if y'all ready for that. What's up, brother?
Not much, man. We are joined. So Billy can talk, but he can't hear us. Well, he can hear me and Chief in the studio, but he can't hear AJ. So what's going on, Billy?
Hey, everyone. No headphones today.
Ask him a question, see if he can answer it.
Hey, everyone.
And we also are joined by a very, very special guest of mine, really good friend / mentor of mine. Large part of why I'm actually a police officer. If it wasn't for this man, I probably wouldn't be a police officer today. And he's helped me out in many ways. And so I would like to welcome our special guest today, newly retired Chief of Police, Derrick Williams. What's going on, Chief?
I'm great. I'm feeling old with you young cats around here.
Looking young though. He look like he can go out there and drop some buckets right now on the basketball court.
He might beat us in a foot race.
Nah, he'll never beat me in no foot race. I'm coming after him. So I got a funny story though. I gotta go here. So a few years ago, we played in this little flag football league around the holidays every year. And so Chief came out there. So this was like the first year that his department came out. And so these dudes came out, bro. They were like, mind you, my team, we got about 7 bodies out there, bro. We about 7 people. We look like the Bad News Bears, threw together some uniforms real quick. Chiefs team came out there looking like the New England Patriots, bro. They had jerseys, American flags on the uniform. No, they came
matching
out there
shoes.
40 matching shoes. They came out there like a team, bro, doing calisthenics together, running routes, doing jumping jacks in sequence. I'm like, God, they almost did the haka. Hold on. We ain't gonna get there yet. So they almost did the haka. So Chief out there came out like the hype man. He had he was waving his towel in the air and stuff like that. They had clipboards. Hey, we went out there and put up the numbers on them.
Well, it was close.
They did you bad,
Chief. And it's when you're the chief, it's a kind of a balance. I can't go out there and I'm supposed to be about the people. So if I don't went out there and play, we had some people that were subpar that I would have done better than. But I'll let it go.
What he's really trying to say is because he wanted to keep a happy home, he wanted to fire some folks out there, but folks had to get their reps in, so he didn't fire them.
You did have like an all-pro ex-NFL guy in your squad too, though.
Hey, well, hold on. Y'all has a couple cats.
Nobody played in the NFL.
Well, hey,
he covered this
so
one dude covered
team,
half
right?
half the field.
So you just gonna negate what I did for the team, though?
With one sentence.
You gonna negate what I did for the team?
Ryan does
I don't know if you're selling
game
that.
as well.
We seen you in action, Ryan.
Hey, no, on the football field it's different though. But I talk a lot of trash though. I talk a lot of trash. When I scored a touchdown, I ran up the sideline past the Chief. I was like, "Where y'all at, Chief?" So, anyways, but it's a pleasure. I don't want to spend too much time on just nonsense today. But the reason I brought you on today, Chief, is because one, I wanted to just tell you thank you, man. Like, a large part of what I do and who I am in law enforcement is because of you. I don't know if you remember. Do you remember that time where where Dexter had brought us to the little soul food restaurant in Rialto, and you had showed up? All right, so I'm just gonna tell the story, and you'll probably let me tell you guys the story. So, if you guys have been listeners to our podcast, you guys all know I wasn't a fan of police officers, didn't want to be a police officer. And so my dad's friend was a captain for the same agency that Derrick worked for. I think you were a deputy chief at the time, and maybe a captain. But anyways, Dexter was trying to get me to become a police officer for years. And so my dad would always say, hey, Ryan, Dexter wants to talk to you. And I'd be like, man, Dad, I don't want to talk to Dexter. Like leave me alone. Like, I'm good. I was selling insurance. And so I remember Dexter had invited my dad to lunch. And so Dexter told my dad to invite me. So me just thinking it was just like, hey, I'm going to go take care of my dad because my dad has MS and stuff like that. I show up, and so Dexter was there. And then so a couple of guys start walking in that were Dexter's friends, and they were in uniform, black guys. So two guys walk in. It wasn't Derrick yet, so there was one of, I think it was the deputy chief of Riverside PD. Then there was another guy that showed up. I think Manu Hubbard showed up. It was his mom's restaurant. Then Chief Williams showed up, and then all these guys were in uniform. And so next thing I know, I'm like, there's like 5 black police officers sitting at the table. And I'm like, oh, I know what this is. I know exactly what this is. They try to set me up around here. They try to sell me the dream. And so they were successful, and they recruited me into the profession. And I'm so glad I made that decision. And so what I wanted to do, I wanted to make this day about you, Chief, and kind of really go back to what got you into law enforcement. And was this something that you the life that you had ever dreamed of at a young age?
It's funny you say that. Growing up, I had kind of the same experiences as you. I didn't know any police officers, kind of had negative contact with police officers. I was in the military. I was in the Air Force. I met my wife in the military. Time goes on, and you either have a point where you're going to get out of the service or you're going to stay in. And I thought, I'm going to get out because I'm going to need a job eventually. So I get out. My wife gets out, and we're working, and we're struggling. 1-bedroom apartment, Hawthorne, small child, just working. And I went to a job fair, and it was a veterans job fair in San Bernardino because I'm in LA at the time. And I met some folks from Ontario PD. I applied for the job. I had also applied at LAPD, and my wife didn't want me to do it. My mother didn't want me to do it.
Really?
But I was like, man, I got to pay these bills. I got to pay these bills.
I got to put some milk in the refrigerator.
Right. I had actually thought about being a CHP officer because I said they just write tickets versus arresting people.
Oh,
I'm serious. It was a stigma being a black man in this profession, and the more I started looking into it, the more I enjoyed it, the more excited I got. Put on my big boy pants and told my wife, "This is what I'm doing," and we moved out this way. Started being a police officer.
Wow.
All my friends were kind of against me, but it was probably the best choice I've ever made.
Well, yeah, I would say. I mean, you made it, and so if you're not familiar, he made it to the highest level that a person can make in law enforcement, which is crazy. I mean, Chief. Now, did you ever have aspirations of becoming a chief that early?
No, sir. I first I just wanted to be a cop. I just wanted to drive the black and white. Then early 90s, a lot of drugs going on. I went to narcotics and thoroughly enjoyed that. Had dreadlocks. I was little. I was Lonzo, man. I was Lonzo before Lonzo, but thoroughly enjoyed it. And I said, you know what? I've always liked working, but I always wanted to be off weekends. So I said, if I can become a detective and have weekends off, made it. Had some great mentors that told me to continue to go into school. While I'm in the detective bureau, still going to school, juggling the family. Then I said, you know what? Take the sergeant's test. And then I'm like, okay, sergeant, I made it. You're still a cop. You're still out having fun. You're mentoring young folks, and that's going to be the ceiling. But as life goes, I had a supervisor that I didn't appreciate, or not appreciate him. He was an ass. And I said, I don't want to work for this guy anymore. I don't want to work for this guy anymore. So I put my name in a hat to be a lieutenant. And then the next thing you know, you start looking around, it's less and less people. Then you're a captain, then you're a deputy chief, and then you're the chief. I never would have dreamed this. Never.
Dang, that's crazy. That's wild.
He made it sound easy. Like you just look around one day and you're just the chief. Like
one day I put in an application. Next thing I know, I showed up to the office one day and they have my name as a chief.
He skipped lieutenant, commander, all of that. He's like, I was just sergeant, and I woke up one day and I was just had eagles on my shoulders. Right?
Oh man,
I have gray hair now though.
You do.
Oh
you
yeah,
do.
this is gray.
And when I saw that picture, because I saw your picture when you were in narcotics when they did your retirement thing, which we got to get that, Billy. I was cracking up with the dreadlocks. My man out there looking like Allen Iverson with the cornrows. But so one of the things you brought up, and AJ, I'm sure you'll have something to add on it. You talk about the stigma of being a black police officer, and this is actually a really good subject to talk about today, because there's some people that say, hey, there's nothing. I mean, if you're a black police officer, you're just like anybody else. There's no other challenges you have. You have minorities that say, no, there are challenges being a minority police officer. You might even have women that say there's minorities obviously as being a woman police officer. And so you go back and you started, I mean, what year was it that you started, Chief?
91.
91. So 91, that was pre-Rodney King.
So I was in the academy when Rodney King, the incident happened, and then I was on the streets when the riots happened, 92.
That's very interesting. The reason that's very interesting is because when I started, that was right around the time that Ferguson happened. And so I remember getting this job and feeling like, man, like, people, I don't know if I like people just not liking me. Like, it already was something where your friends and family kind of think like, what? Like, you're going into law enforcement. But then it was like another thing to where you get into it and you're almost this guy in the middle, because as a black man growing up, you've also experienced certain things. I know I experienced certain prejudices and things like that. And so it kind of put me in a weird place, in a middle place where I didn't know if this is what I really wanted to do or not. Did you ever feel like that at all, like during your career?
Funny you say that. One of the first times I had that moment, Boys in the Hood came out. Remember that movie, Boys in the Hood?
So do I.
So there was a movie theater.
You want to see a dead body? That's a movie
come on, Ricky.
Come on. That's a movie quote. Billy does not know what that is, but I'm sure he will by next podcast.
So Boys in the Hood comes out, and again, I'm a new cop, so I don't have any intel on anything. But the swing shift sergeant made us all put on our helmets and riot sticks to go stand out at the movie theater. And as I'm getting there, I'm thinking, it seems pretty peaceful to me. Why are we here? And I'm thinking, am I a part of this problem? Just standing there. And it bothered me. It truly did. There was terminology used in the briefing rooms that wasn't acceptable to me. Use the N-word for descriptors and things of that sort. And they tell a story and they would insert race. And I was, I ate that for many, many years. And there was a point in time in my career where I was like, what did race have to do with that statement? Why did you have to insert there was a black dude that did this? And some people changed, some people resisted more, but I'd go on calls and some people were relieved to see a black person. So that made me feel better. But then there were others that said, why am I doing this? Because I'm black. And then I'd have to tell the talk that, I didn't put the dope in your pocket. You have to accept that, So I was always talking about positive change though. I always gave people opportunities to I was an ambassador for this job. You can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. And some people I touched and some people I didn't.
Man, that's powerful. And if you guys are listening into this, if you guys can't hear AJ because he's on mute, and so I know it sounds kind of weird because usually AJ is always laughing at my greatest jokes, but he's on mute. But the reason I bring that up is because I know AJ is going to chime in a minute. He's watching his child. But one of the things that we've talked about, we've touched on, and you in many ways, Chief, are a voice for a lot of people. There's a subject. So I recently got a text from a friend of mine that's in law enforcement who is a black guy, and won't tell you the agency he works for, nothing like that. But one of the things he touched on or brought up to me was, hey, can you talk about how it may be difficult being a black man in law enforcement or just a minority, but he specifically said black man, in that it almost feels like it's harder for him externally and internally sometimes because he faces challenges that other people don't understand. Now, from your experience, is that something that you feel there's credibility, or do you feel like it doesn't exist? It's more of in our mind as a minority in law enforcement. I know that's a tough question. I've personally, the way I answer that for myself is that I think it definitely comes with challenges, because I think there's things that people won't understand as being a minority in law enforcement, especially when you look at the history and where law enforcement has come. But at the same time, I've also made it my personal thing where I'm not going to let anything stop me. So no matter what somebody may think, no matter what somebody may say, I may have to work a little harder, but I'm not going to allow that to stop me from trying to get to where I'm getting. So do you think there's any credibility to it being tougher for an officer that's of color in the profession? Probably some places might be a little bit more harder than others because some agencies are more progressive. So what are your thoughts?
It's an interesting topic because we're all human beings, but you've got to get to know the person first. So you walk in the room, you can't change your skin color. So there is that factor of immediately seeing that. But if you get to know folks, when I came to Ontario PD, there were 3 blacks. And then as the numbers started to get better, there were moments when there were 4 or 5 African Americans talking in a group, and someone in the group felt odd for being there. And I would say why do you feel that way? Because someone's going to think we're conspiring. Well, then that's their problem. That's their problem. I know what it's like to walk in a room and go to a party being the only person of color. I know that. But what I did was I always opened up my home. I introduced people to grits. I introduced them to barbecuing on a charcoal versus gas, things of that sort. In rap music, people have learned that some Black women are loud and animated. There's nothing to be threatened about that. So it was. I took it upon myself to try to educate people. Coming up during the testing process, I never sat across the table from another person of color. Every time I interviewed, it was a white person. So subconsciously, that was there. But I mean, obviously, it took me a little while. I got passed over in the beginning. And I could have said that was the reasons, but like everyone's always told, you got to do better, you got to do more. So I just kind of burdened myself with that. But I just think people have got to understand people. You can't change your skin color.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's so aspiring for me when I look at you and your story is that oftentimes people will say, "Hey, I'm not getting promoted because I'm Black," or "It's harder because I'm Black," and there may be some truth to that in certain places, in certain agencies, no doubt about it. I mean, because we got to be real. There's certain places in our country that are still behind the 8 ball in many aspects. However, you're living proof that no matter what people say, no matter what you think people think of you, you can make it to the highest level. I mean, you're living proof. So, I mean, for those that say, "Oh, well, I can't do this because of this," we can't use as an excuse of why to stop you from getting to where you want to go. Like the mere fact that you can make it to the chief of police and start at an agency where when you got hired there was only 3 other Black people, that to me tells you that you can go out there and accomplish it. Will it be harder? Yeah, it may be a little bit harder in certain aspects. But one of the things I want to really touch on and hone in on is the fact of you really educated people and you allowed people to get to know you for you. And I think that's one of the, when we talk about breaking barriers, one of the best ways to break a barrier is to get to know somebody. AJ said it in our last episode of the podcast of talking about this proximity piece, which I've been really meditating on the last week, is getting close to people that you wouldn't really typically get close to. And when you really get to know that person for who they are beyond the skin color, it really makes it hard to dislike that person based on the color of their skin or based on what you think of that race. Because think about it. I mean, we're all human beings and we all watch the news. We all see TV, and certain minorities, not certain minorities, certain races or all races, and quite frankly, are portrayed certain ways. Like we can talk about stereotypes. I remember I did a class recently and they put up a group of words and descriptors. There are a bunch of adjectives. And they didn't put, and they said they were all in groups, and they said, "I want you to name that race that you think it applies to," and it was a stereotype type activity. And sure enough, you look at certain descriptors, you say Asian, Hispanic, Black, white, And I was like, dang, it's crazy that we automatically do that, but it's subconscious. We really do that. And so despite having that preconceived notion of what, we think people are, when you get to know them beyond those stereotypes, you'll realize that we're all, in reality, we're all very similar to one another. And what got you to chief was not the color of your skin. What got you to chief was you possessed every single quality and equip that's necessary to be a good leader. And so, AJ, go ahead and come off of mute, man, because I know you probably got all types of things for this.
Yeah, absolutely, man. First off, you have to excuse my setup. My wife is sick, so she's been in the basement where the studio is. So I'm in the living room right now with little man, trying to work it out. But Chief, I just want to thank you for being on, because you bring a lot of validity to our podcast for two reasons. The first of which is we always preach that you have to be the change that you want to see, whether it's in the police department, whether it's in the community, whether it's any aspect of your life. And you're a living example of that, despite the adversity that you faced, despite the many hurdles that I could only assume that you had to jump in order to get to the position of chief. You never let it deter you. You never let it slow you down. And you definitely didn't let it stop you from achieving the highest position possible. The second reason I say that is we live in a time where there are still a certain amount of police officers who don't think that racism is around. And here you are saying that when you first got on the department, that there were derogatory terms being thrown around by police officers describing people. So it's just refreshing to hear someone who was in law enforcement at that time say, hey, look, when I was on, Rodney King happened, and apparently my son was on the podcast right now. But when I was on, Rodney King happened, and they were using these terms. Hold on one second. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine, bro. It's a family podcast.
It is a family podcast. We had he better start crying.
Hey, I'm calling Child Protective Services, bro.
So I am so sorry. So anyway, my question to you is this, Chief. We live in a time. Billy, you got to edit this.
No, we keeping this in. This is good for content.
Oh yeah, bottle. All right, sorry about that. All right, so Chief, we live in a time where, we're coming off of a lot of politicians and people in power saying that we need police reform and defund the police, and we want to change what policing looks like. I can only imagine what policing looked like when you first got on to where it's at now. So my question is a two-part question. One, does that scare you, talking of police reform in today's society? And two, did policing change in a positive or a negative manner from the time that you got on to the time you retired?
I think it's better now. I can specifically speak for my organization, looking at what I see on the news and our neighboring organizations, but we are getting better. It's unfortunate that you have to learn from your mistakes, but as long as you're getting better, we are humans, we are making mistakes, and we've got to change and positively go forward. The first question, what was the first one you said?
Does talk of police reform
right.
scare you?
No. I do think that, reform is changing, it's getting better. And I think that it can be tweaked. They're talking about not responding to
mental health calls.
But again, you don't know what you don't know until you get there. But we are put in bad situations where we respond and someone is distraught and come at you with a knife. You've got to do what you've got to do. How do we eliminate that? I don't know. But I do think that we're living in a society where no one wants to take responsibility or accountability for their actions. We're too quick to judge. And I think on the other side, normal citizens and community members need to be informed on the laws of the court and rules of evidence and things of that. But there's a major divide in. If someone in your family or your loved one was killed at the hands of law enforcement, then I understand where you're troubled, but understand how you got there. I always talked when I in my family members, I said, comply now and complain later. Put that chip away, but you got to trust the system. And if the system has betrayed you, then I understand your reluctancy to trust it. But without that system, we'd have a lawless society. So you've got to comply, and then complain and trust it.
Man, I saw some videos this weekend where I think it was in Chicago or maybe it was North Carolina. One of them, some guys literally were in the middle of the street. It was a big old crowd, and they just start dumping. I think they let off like 130 rounds, automatic assault rifles and everything like that. Then there was another video I saw where some guys just walked up on this one guy that was just getting it out of his car and then robbed him at point blank with some other assault rifles. And
I
that's
seen
what,
that. He had like a Draco.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is like, and I think I put up on my story, it was like, yes, this is real stuff. Like, this is real. And I think people live in this facade sometimes, this imaginary reality that it's not that bad or crime isn't that bad. Like I talked about, I did a video last week about how in Oregon they decriminalized some of the hard drugs. And you'd be amazed what some of the people were saying. Oh, I think this is a great step in the right direction and this and that. And I'm like, but the people that say that are either A, some of the people that use the hardcore drugs, or B, some of the people that have never seen a person that's used hardcore drugs and don't know the effects of it. It's the same thing. The other thing, one of the other videos that's going viral right now on our page is when I talk about why we don't shoot people in the leg. You'd be amazed how many people continue to make this argument of, well, you guys should train more to shoot people in the leg. Well, you guys obviously are the experts, so you guys should definitely know how to shoot people in the leg. I'm like, you guys have no sense of reality, and that it's sad. It's almost scary because it's like, I get it, you're frustrated, but yet you're making claims from a place you would never understand unless you actually suit it up and put yourself in our shoes. So what gives you the authority to step up and say, this is how you guys should do it and why you should do it? And so that kind of leads me to my next question / topic is that right now there's a lot of people, new officers or people that are wanting to go into law enforcement that are getting discouraged. I've had email after email of people telling me, hey, I wanted to go into law enforcement, but in light of recent events, I don't know if I want to anymore. I have heard people say that are newer officers that are like, I signed up for this job to do better, but in light of recent events, it's kind of hard, and I don't know whether or not this is for me anymore. What would you say, Chief, as somebody, you're newly retired, you made it through a successful careers, and I'm sure that you had, a lot of adversity throughout your career. Maybe not as much as adversity you're seeing now, maybe more, I don't know. But what would you tell that new person that is struggling right now with what they're doing to stay in the fight and just to keep pushing, and because people still need help?
This is a noble profession. Society needs police officers. You took the oath for a reason. Don't give up. It is difficult. We are all humans. You are supported. Contrary to what you see on the news, the communities in Inland Empire, they support law enforcement. They love law enforcement. Law enforcement is needed. You've gone this far. Continue the good fight. Surround yourself with positive people. You got into this job because you enjoy people. Continue to do that. But again, if you're conflicted, talk to someone about it. I was an unnamed officer. I was right after Ferguson, he has 2 young boys, and I talked to the officer on a regular basis, and we were at a Rams game and didn't go to the Rams game together. We just happened to catch each other in the aisle. And he told me that he was conflicted and was thinking about leaving the profession because of the current events. And that was important to me. It was a great game. I sat there, and this guy, he still owes me a football game because we sat and talked for the rest of the game in the aisle.
So you just not gonna let me watch the game, huh? So you just not gonna let me see that touchdown that they just scored, huh?
Right now, so you get what you need.
Exactly. So, but it was important to me. We're all conflicted. We all need to do this, but someone's got to do it. Society needs us. And you get better by doing things that you guys are doing. Get out and educate folks, talk to folks, advocate for this profession. We are needed. It's tough. You're talking about the simulators and folks talking about wanting to shoot in the legs and stuff. Though there are people that I've learned going to Sacramento, doing the legislative stuff, that we cannot change their mind. And there's nothing you can do about that. You can talk about how difficult this job is. You can invite them to come in simulators. They won't do it because they know how difficult it is. That's the reality of this. But we as cops, or you guys as cops, have got to do better. You've got to understand, enjoy people. If you enjoy people, you'll be okay.
Okay, I love that. So as a chief of police, though, and again, I want to keep, because it's rare that we get to sit down. We've had one other chief. We had Chief Comstock on here a while back, but that was more different topics. As a chief of police, your job is you're over the whole organization. Like the buck stops at you. And I gotta imagine that's got to be hard because from a political standpoint, there's things that you want to do, but you also got to do what's right for the agency. And then you have young guys like myself that want to come in and start changing things and, utilizing social media and doing things to get out there. How do you balance that as a chief? And what would you say to other, commanding officers at other departments that are running organizations and they're hesitant on allowing their officers to utilize some of this new technology and new, social media stuff to get ahead? I mean, honestly, I think one of the things, and this is a personal thing, and me, Derrick has become a really good friend of mine. He's family to me. I mean, he's family. And I remember, and I know you remember this, about 4 years ago, I was planning on going to Ontario PD. I was planning on leaving the current department, and I was planning on going to work for chief. Everything was going smooth. I didn't really have anything in my background. I had nothing but really good evals. So I don't foresee me not being able to get hired with you. And I had multiple conversations with you, and I know, and chief was like, hey man, he was giving it to me heavy. He was like, come on man, like putting it on me hot. But at the end of the day, I ended up deciding to stay where I was at because I told you that the agency I'm with has always treated me good. They've always, in light of everything that I've done, the social media stuff, anything that I've done, they've always encouraged me and done that. And I think that was part of the large reason that contributed to me staying. So what would you say to other people that were in your position or that are in your position as a chief of police to help, retain some of their guys and encourage them to utilize some of their gifts because we have a lot of people, and AJ can agree to this, attest to it. We have a lot of people that hit us up that get discouraged because, oh, my department's not allowing me to use social media. Oh, my department, they won't allow me to go out there and interact with kids, or I posted a video of me dancing and I got in trouble for it. We get a lot of that. And so there's like kind of this impasse where you have the older generation meets the newer generation, and some people don't know how to adapt to that.
Great question. So social media is new. Cops by nature are cautious. There's two sides to social media, and if it can get away from you. So what we did in my organization is we created a social media team, not to say that you don't have talent or AJ doesn't have talent, but if you're going to speak for the organization, speak for the organization. Mm-hmm. So that's how we transitioned. So social media is everywhere, and you're behind the eight ball if you're not doing anything on social media. Mm-hmm. You've got to take the good and the bad that come with it, because you can't censor folks when they talk bad about your organization. You've got to be up on current events. You can't just post dancing videos. You've got to be productive with what you're doing. So I would encourage everyone to be involved in social media. There's classes, there's people you can talk to do it the right way. There's folks that like Facebook, there's folks that like Instagram, and then there's the Twitters and the TikToks. There's all kind of stuff, but you're talking about defunding the police and reallocating funds. So then maybe you will take a little chunk of your tactical team's budget and put it towards a social media budget, because that's important. That's how you humanize your officers. That's how you send your message. That's how you tell your story. We have to now we have body worn cameras. We have to they, not me anymore.
You're like, that's y'all problem now.
You have to put out, you have to release your videos. So we have a team to do those sort of things. You can contract that stuff out, but there's talent inside the organization. Every organization, there's talent. People did something before they're police officers. So tap into that and utilize it. And that they get better employees.
I think that's absolutely right. I think that's what helped me out, is learning my talents and learning how to use it within the scope of law enforcement. And I think it doesn't happen by accident. The work that me, AJ, and Billy been doing, we just kind of recognize the gifts that we have and used it for the positive. And so that's my encouragement to everybody else that's sitting on the sideline listening to this, is how to stay motivated, and keep going at whatever you're trying to do. Like the chief said, just get involved, but make sure you got to do it tactfully. I mean, that's probably the most, because I gotta imagine, as a chief of police, you guys, one of the things that probably freaks you out is somebody in your organization about to screw something up.
Oh, no doubt about it. Like, that was I don't want a pity party, but if you're a chief, if I were currently working, I was sitting in here, I could lose my job now for something that a guy or girl was out there doing. But I think that, you sit and talk to people. And another thing, leaders got to understand, you're not just a chief or a deputy chief or a commander for your department. You're that representative for the whole city. And you got to keep that in mind, because there's some cops that think that it's all this way. And you can't be. I used to tell people, I'm the chief of the 53 square miles of Ontario. I'm not just the chief of 2500 South Archibald. And you've got to understand that and react and deliver services that way. Because, they're police officers are true believers, and they're there to fight crime and uphold law. But, every contact you make out there on the streets doesn't need to lead to an arrest.
Well, that's a good point you bring up, because that right there says, I think sometimes I think, again, going back to human nature, our human nature side of us is we're always, if you're not a chief of police, if you're like, a regular line level officer or whatever it may be, you're just thinking about numero uno and my immediate guys around me. But as a chief of police, you're forced to have this global view of things. And so some of the decision making that you guys do, it may not be in the best interest of your guys, but it may be in the best interest of the city as a whole. And so to find that way to balance those two, to say, hey, look, I know my guys aren't really going to like this that much, but at the same time, this is probably going to benefit the city. Those are got to be tough decisions. And I think that's probably where leadership really comes in, is to try to get that buy-in. And so for somebody that's trying to promote right now, or anybody that's in the process, what's your best advice to those that are attempting to promote and go up through the ranks, to start changing that mindset away from numero uno to, I got to start creating buy-in and developing winners for the organization in the city?
Don't be a one-trick pony. And I mean that if you're a tactical person, don't just do tactical stuff. Become an SRO, become a traffic person. Be varied in your skill set. Talk to people. Get involved. The police unions are also important. It's political. It's about messaging. Be a mentor. If you're in a higher rank, mentor someone lower than you. And if you're looking to rise up, find people that are doing positive things, and let them know that you're interested in what they're doing. Educate yourself. There's many law enforcement classes. Go to a college. Well, COVID now, but go to a college and sit in a classroom with other people that don't think like you. I think that a lot of times law enforcement, a lot of folks will watch the same news channel on TV in their car and sit around and talk to people that are the same mindset of them. And I think that's not healthy.
No,
it's not healthy. You don't have to agree, but if you can understand where someone's coming from, I think you're winning.
We talked about that last episode, is just getting out of your comfort zone and meeting somebody that's different from you. And, I think that's probably one of the ways that America will be able to fix its problems, if we stop congregating with people that look like us, sound like us, and talk like us. That's a hard thing to do. It's really not that hard to do, but we make it harder than what it is. And I think we do a lot of that in law enforcement too. It's so funny watching you, AJ, you over there.
I'm trying everything. I'm rocking him. I got a bottle. Listen, I was ready for this.
Little man don't even care though. He like, yeah, whatever, pops.
Yeah, he don't. He's like, I'm gonna scream when I want to scream and cry when I want to cry, and ain't nothing you can do about it. So get used to it. Man. I do have another question for the chief, and that is, we live in a time where a lot of people are finally realizing the political pressure of being a police officer and or running a police organization. Can you touch on that? That political pressure that you've experienced, or maybe you haven't experienced throughout like your tenure of being a police officer and a police chief?
Oh, you do have to deal with that. And it's funny, coming up in an organization, politics didn't get involved in that. POLICE, police and politics, the same POL in the beginning. And I think that you've got to understand it. You've got to remain neutral. It is a game. Politicians want to get reelected. Politicians will say things to get them reelected. Police chiefs, police officers, you're a pawn, because there's someone always bigger and better, and you've got to navigate those waters. A lot of self-interest goes on in that, but I think that I can always say I was true to myself, and I was true to the organization. I would meet with, I'd meet with the city manager. I'd meet with, if I met with some of the folks in council, I'd meet with the union people. And then I also had some folks that I came up with the organization with that didn't promote for one reason or another, and talk about things. And I was never the end all, know it all, be it all. I'm always open for input and open. I made this decision for this reason, and let people understand that. The buck does stop with me, and I've got to justify what I did and why I did it or didn't do it. Didn't sit behind my desk and just shoot up emails. I'd walk the halls. You talk to people, you get to know them, and you're genuine. I just happened to promote up. That's how I was successful.
Have you ever faced a situation where you wanted to do something but you couldn't, or were strongly recommended to not do that from like maybe the mayor or like city council or someone like that?
No, sometimes you're met with a tad bit of resistance, but if it makes sense, justify it is what I was always taught. It's I run the police department. Politicians run the city, but I was put in this position for a reason. So I was entrusted with this assets to do what needed to be done. There were times when I did have to justify it, though. There were times I have to write a lot of memorandums, show a lot of practice. But I was pretty successful in getting what I needed to get done.
So let me ask you this: what would you say the biggest challenge of being a police chief was? I said a police chief. What's the biggest challenge of being a police chief, and what was probably the biggest reward of being a police chief?
The biggest challenge, everyone wants to be liked, and not everybody likes me anymore. I had to discipline folks. I had to fire folks. That's not cool at all. But, I've got to protect the organization, protect the city. So, doing things like that. Promotion day, 50 people want to get promoted. You promote 2. So you got 2 that are happy, 48 that aren't.
48 hate you.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the difficult part about it. But, you have to be able to send messages on, you can't sell wolf tickets. So you have to, get down and say, this is what you're doing right. This is what you can do better. And this is what you suck at. And, it's up to you. I try to be open and honest as much as I can. What I'm most satisfied about is I love the way my police department looks now. I think we're the most diverse department in the Inland Empire, well trained, self-sufficient, and not a lot of problems. And I'm truly happy about that.
Was there any resistance to that road to diversity?
Yes. No. Yes.
Let's talk about that, because what kind of resistance were you getting to diversify your police department?
I looked at women. Women are half the population, and we had a small number of women, and I said, this is going to change. I did direct recruiting. We started bringing them in, and people were saying, some of the Neanderthal knuckle dragger guys were like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? She's smarter than you. She's more athletic than you. She's more articulate than you. She's going to be your boss one day. So I think that they were just kind of jealous. And there was a time when we had a shift of 15 officers, 10 of them were women on one shift.
Wow.
I went from being, I remember we had our first female foursome in golf, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Then we had an all-female softball team. So
that's cool.
That really is. It really that made me happy as a leader in that organization.
Now, what about recruiting minorities other than women? Was there challenges with that?
Yeah, I had to say that, some people like, oh, you're Derrick's boy, you're Derrick's girl, but again, highly educated, articulate, athletic, skilled individuals that we brought in. Again, when we had to do when Dallas was popping off and we had we had some Black Lives Matter protests and things of that sort going on. It's nice to be able to go in your pocket and pull out 3 African-American males and say, go over here and do this. That's when it's okay. But when I'm just swearing them in, people are like, well, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And that's unfortunate, because the reason it's unfortunate is and this is just an honest statement, it doesn't feel that way. Like if you hire a whole bunch of white people, or you have in the past,
it's the way it's supposed to be.
Nobody says anything, because it's just kind of standard practice. But you hire a bunch of, say you hired your next 5 or 6 people were black, because you're black, it almost makes it seem, oh, now you're hiring because you're black. which it's almost that double standard. Like you get held to that double standard because it's like, oh, well, why are you hiring so many black people all of a sudden? Why aren't you're negating some of the other white candidates? And that's the tough part. And I remember taking a picture with a lot of it was all the black officers in the department, because at my department, I think if you look back, there was only 2 African Americans that were at the department for a long time. And then we started getting more African Americans. So we took a picture because that was like a historic moment to say, hey, look, like this is showing whatever year it was, this is showing diversity. But yet there was backlash behind that. But my thing was like, but if you look at all the walls, most of these pictures on the wall are mostly white people in the pictures. And so I think that's the hard part to balance, is to say like, yeah, it's not about race, but at the same time, don't give me a hard time if I'm trying to get more diverse in our hiring practices, especially when minorities, like I can't tell you how many times I've gone on a call where it actually has helped because I'm a minority. And so I can only imagine that those are some challenges as you faced.
Mm-hmm. And again, it's not the majority of folks; it's the vocal minority,
yeah,
and that is
yep.
really it. And they're boisterous about that. But accolades throughout the community that people love us. It's a great. I mean, we mirror our community now, and I think that's what you want. There was a time when this is many years ago. I went to a call, and it wasn't my beat, but it was the other guy's beat, and I was there to backing up. And as I'm walking up the walkway to the door, he's shaking his head and walking away, and I'm going, what? He goes, I just can't deal with them. They're your people. It was some angry black women, and he just I can't deal with it. and he walked out and said, bro, this is your call. And I sat there and talked to him and then laughed it up. But it was funny. I mean, but again, things that you just remember, little things that you remember. But
man, that's hilarious.
It's part of this job, man. It's a great laugh, great job.
Oh,
and
man.
you young people out there, keep doing it and be safe out there. That's the biggest thing I tell you.
That's phenomenal. AJ, any parting words or parting questions for Chief?
Yeah, I got a lot, man. Still kind of holding this little monster down right now. I need some advice on how to control this little beast right here is what I need. Right. First off, did you say you had a golf team, Chief? Did I hear that correct?
Well, at a golf tournament. We had a golf tournament. So
Cali is different. Like, I ain't never heard of a police department that had a golf. That's not true. I guess our union
I ain't
has
never
golf
heard of a police department where y'all just go drink on duty. But I mean,
who drink on duty? Who said that?
Got him quiet there.
I didn't hear. Who be drinking on duty? Oh, Chief, if you could just give a piece of advice. We have a lot of supervisors who listen to this, whether they're sergeants, lieutenants, commanders, or whatnot. Can you just give a piece of advice on how to not only handle like today's climate, like as far as we want police reform, we want to defund the police, but also how to embrace change? As Ryan touched on a little bit earlier, you have younger police officers who are coming up, using apps such as like TikTok and Instagram and Twitter and whatnot, how to not only navigate through the complexities of like the negativity we're facing, but how to embrace the positive change that new officers could bring.
Okay. Supervisors are the most important aspect in this whole thing, especially the sergeant, like you said, lieutenant commander. They're touching these guys and girls on a daily basis. So know your people, number one. Know your people, managed by wandering around. I know it's lonely. You feel like you're checking up on people when you go to those calls, but those are so very important. You will save your guys and girls from getting in trouble by showing up to those calls. I think empower them. If these guys and girls have these resources in their pocket and they want to share, they've got to give a comfort level to the senior leaders in the organization. So empower them, give them the opportunity, give them the platform to teach that in a briefing. And if it really goes well, send them up to the command staff level meetings and have them demonstrate that there. Again, the commanders and above, we learn about these things at conferences and things of that sort. But if you've got that skill set inside there, it'll benefit your guys and girls. You'll be self-promoting. You'll give them opportunities and skills to show that they can lead and demonstrate and move on up. So that's really simple. Be involved and know your kids, and you'll be fine.
I love it.
Great. You got anything else, AJ?
I do not, for the first time ever.
That's because you're over there worried about taking care of little man.
I am. This has been a roller coaster. Listen,
man.
as I'm sure you can imagine, brother.
Trust me, I've had to do the same thing before. Chief, any parting thoughts before I get to one last segment? I got a fun segment for us before we get to the end. But any last parting words for us, Chief? Or
I think for you two, just keep doing what you're doing, man. I think that's truly, truly important. I think that you guys are touching folks that will one day become police officers or one day understand us. So keep doing what you're doing. Remain positive, and don't dwell on all the negative stuff out there.
Man, I appreciate it. Chief,
not to cut you off, Ryan, but I just want to touch on one other thing that we said earlier in the podcast, just to kind of reinforce it, is we have a chief on the podcast right now who came on the police department, and then Rodney King happened, which brought a lot of change into the profession of law enforcement. And the chief is telling you from his own mouth that change turned out to be positive. We are now facing coming off the heels of all of these police involved uses of force and, protest and Black Lives Matter riots and whatnot. And we're talking about police reform. You have to have faith that these changes are going to be positive as well moving forward. Don't be afraid of reform. We've been facing it throughout the profession of law enforcement. When we had body worn cameras, that was a type of reform. When we had cruiser cameras, I'm sure people thought that was the end of the world. They're putting cameras in the cruisers and microphones in our pockets. That was a type of reform. So I'm not saying just allow people to do whatever, but you have to have some faith that this reform is going to be positive. And if you have the opportunity to influence that reform, do so. But don't dwell on it and think that, this is the end. I got to look for another profession. Like, we've been here before as a profession. Like, keep fighting the fight.
Good words. Good words. So, what we're gonna do last to end this podcast today, I got to give a shout out to my boy Craig Henry. He is a avid follower of our podcast. My bad, y'all.
Hey,
my bad.
Chief, you might want to scoot over a little bit, Chief.
I was into this. That was into the elbow, as it should be, according to CDC. That's where it should have been. But anyways. Craig Henry is a follower of ours, and I'm giving him an open shout out just because this next segment is actually brought to you guys by him, and he is a Philadelphia police officer. So in light of Thanksgiving coming up next week, we're going to do a quick activity. It's called One Gotta Go. So I'm going to name 5 dishes off, and we got to all decide one of them has to go. I want Billy to go first, though. I want Billy to go first.
Because this is going to be different.
So, item number 1 is the turkey. Item number 2 is mashed potatoes. Item number 3, sweet potato casserole. Item number 4, macaroni and cheese. And item number 5, Billy probably won't have it at his table, but some greens. So one of them has to go.
What kind of greens are they?
They're green.
Are they collard greens?
Billy's looking at me like, why would you do this to me, right? So turkey, mac and cheese, greens, mashed potatoes, and sweet potato casserole. One of them has to go.
Okay, well, I'll be honest. I'm not a big mashed potato fan. I think they're plain and they're a waste of plate. But I think I am going to have to go with the greens. I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Oh, bruh.
Which one did he say? I missed it.
Huh?
Which one did he say? I missed
greens.
It. Oh, Billy. Come on, Billy.
Hey, party foul. But anyways.
Party foul, for
all right,
sure.
AJ, you next.
I'm going to go, man, this might surprise you. The turkey might have to go because if not my son agrees, not everybody can make a turkey. Like most turkey is dry. I'm gonna just put that out there.
I'm gonna go turkey. So do you got?
Go ahead.
Do you have a honey baked ham out by you?
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Okay, what I need you to do, and if you listen to this podcast, honey baked ham, y'all can pay me later. You need to go and get the Cajun turkey from Honey Baked Ham.
A Cajun turkey.
A Cajun turkey. That turkey, I used to not like turkey. That turkey by far changed my life. So you welcome Honey Baked Ham. If you listen, go to Honey Baked Ham.
I've had some good deep fried turkeys.
Use promo code.
So yeah, I'm gonna go turkey, and then the runner up is mashed potatoes.
Ooh, okay. Chief.
I could tell I'm with a bunch of kids. So I smoke my turkey. Delicious. Delicious.
I've
See,
had
you
that
guys are
before,
young.
too.
Mashed potatoes, that's the easy one. Mashed potatoes got to go. That's easy.
Yeah, okay.
Easy.
Hey, so I'm with Chief. Mashed potatoes got to go. That was the first. I was like, oh, that's a no brainer. Mashed potatoes got to go. You eat the right turkey. Now greens, Billy, I can't get with you on the greens, bro.
Nah. Greens is like the number one spot. Like you're not going to your aunt or your uncle's house if greens aren't being served.
I got the greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes.
I like this game, though. I like this game.
Oh, yeah. There will be more to come of this. And so, but I figured we'd do that one today in light of Thanksgiving around the corner. Billy, I know we did it last year, but we're going to have to go out on that song. I got the greens, beans, potatoes, tomatoes. But anyways, lastly, I just want to thank all of our followers. If you guys truly like this podcast, make sure you guys give us a 5-star rating, 5-star review. It truly means the world to us. We got to get up to that number one spot. We've been as close as it was an 8 or 5 this year. I know we were up there.
I think we were 5.
Yeah, we got all the way up to number 5 as far as government rated podcasts in the country. So we trying to make it to that number one spot. Shout out to our sponsor, Thin Line Anthem. If you guys are trying to get back into shape, trying to get healthy, or if you want to get healthy after Thanksgiving, make sure you guys go on to thinlineanthem.com. Type in promo code It's Needed, all caps, no spaces, for 25% off your order. And the last thing I want to do is I want to read a positive review from our It's Needed podcast, just because we want to just give you guys all things praise. Says this was on November 6th. Thank you for what you are doing to bridge the gap between law enforcement and our communities. When we do our jobs correctly as police officers, we are truly doing God's work. God bless you for representing us law enforcement officers and having difficult conversations to solve issues and come up with solutions. Be safe out there, brother. God is in control. Thanks, Ryan and AJ. So that was a shout out to you, Utah cop. This is a Utah police officer. So want to give a shout out to him and anybody else that's given us ratings and reviews. We appreciate you.
Yeah, those are iTunes reviews, guys. Please leave them. They help us out a lot.
They definitely help us. And we didn't get a chance to touch on current reviews, but if you guys have any issues or topics that you guys want to hear discussed on this podcast, also shoot that over to us. Check out our Instagram page, It's Needed Podcast. It's all one word. So that way you guys can follow us on there and see me make fun of AJ and Billy all day, especially because Billy told us he wants to get rid of the green. So,
and Billy is looking professional today. I don't know what happened. Like Billy got his
I'm gonna
hair
bring you
swooped
some.
in the
My wife's
front.
gonna make some greens. I'm gonna bring some for you.
I gotta try, the real deal. So
Smoked turkey neck.
he said the real deal. Like
my family, we bought like the pre-made, like Safeway, like the full thing was pre-made. It's not good. It's just not good.
no.
Billy's like, I've always wanted to try some collard greens.
some collard greens. If you
Like,
don't got
what was
like
that
chunks of
episode
ham in it.
Remember the episode of Chappelle's show when he was acting like Tiger Woods? He was like, bye fried rice, hello fried chicken.
Collard greens.
All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you. Thanks for sitting with us and listening to the Chief. Chief, thank you, man, for everything you've done for me. Honestly, man, I wouldn't be in this position if it wasn't for you. I wouldn't be having this discussion if it wasn't for you. So thank you to your wife. Thank you, man. And to all you guys, to everybody else out there, we appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys next week.
Peace.